The last Pyrenean ibex died on January 6, 2000. Her name was Celia. She was found pinned beneath a fallen tree in the Ordesa National Park in Spain. She had been alone for years by that point. The last male had died in 1992. The last other female sometime after that. By the time Celia died, she was not just the last of her kind alive. She was the last of her kind that would ever live. A subspecies that had existed for hundreds of thousands of years ended under a tree in a mountain park while nobody was watching. The question most people ask about that moment is what we lost. That is not the question this video is asking. Question here is what Celia was experiencing in the years before that tree fell. What the biology of her situation actually looked like from the inside. Start with what her species was built for. Pyrenean ibex were social animals. They lived in herds. The females and young moved together in groups. The males formed bachelor herds outside of breeding season. Their entire sensory world, their alarm systems, their foraging behavior, their movement patterns were calibrated around the presence of other ibex. The calls they made, the postures they held, the way they read threat, all of it was designed for a social context that no longer existed. When a social species loses its conspecifics, the biology does not quietly adjust. Research on social mammals isolated from their own kind documents a specific and measurable response. Cortisol levels rise and stay elevated, not in the acute spike pattern of immediate threat, but in the chronic low pattern associated with prolonged stress with no resolution. The body reads the absence of the group as a persistent emergency. It keeps waiting for the situation to resolve. It does not resolve. Studies on sheep, which share social architecture with wild ungulates like ibex, show that individuals separated from their flock and given no auditory or visual contact with conspecifics display behaviors researchers describe as searching. They move in widening patterns. They vocalize at intervals. They orient toward distant sounds. The behavior is not random distress. It is targeted. The animal is looking for something specific. What it is looking for is the group. And the group is gone. Lonesome George was a Pinta Island tortoise. He was discovered in 1972 on an island in the Galapagos where his subspecies had been declared extinct. He lived at the Charles Darwin Research Station for 40 years. He died in 2012. He was somewhere between 100 and 200 years old. For those 40 years, researchers and conservationists attempted to breed him with related tortoise subspecies. None of the eggs survived. George produced no offspring. When he died, his subspecies ended with him. Tortoises are not social in the way ibex are social. They do not form herds. They do not have alarm calls. Their cognitive architecture is different. Their sensory world is different. He was not behaviorally abnormal. He ate. He moved. He responded to his environment in the ways tortoises respond to their environments. Whatever the absence of his subspecies meant to him, it did not register in any way researchers could detect from the outside. That is its own kind of answer, or the beginning of one. The harder case is Martha. Martha was the last passenger pigeon. She died at the Cincinnati Zoo on September 1, 1914. She was approximately 29 years old. The passenger pigeon had been, within living memory at the time of her death, one of the most numerous bird species on Earth. Estimates place the population at between 3 and 5 billion individuals at peak. They migrated in flocks so large they darkened the sky for days. John James Audubon described a migration in 1813 that he estimated took 3 days to pass overhead. The sound was described as a sustained roar. Within 100 years, the species was gone, and at the end of that collapse, there was Martha, alone in an enclosure at a zoo, surrounded by humans, with no member of her species anywhere on the planet. Passenger pigeons were extreme social obligates. Their biology was not just calibrated for group living. It depended on it. Their breeding behavior required colonial nesting in the millions. Researchers believe their reproductive systems may have needed the stimulus of mass social context to function normally at all. Martha did not breed in captivity. Whether that was age, absence of a mate, or something more fundamental in her biology is not something the record can answer. What the record does show is that she became progressively less mobile in her final years. She spent more time on a single low perch. Zoo staff noted she was slower, quieter. Whether any of that was a behavioral response to isolation or simply age is impossible to separate out at this distance. She was old. She was alone. Those two facts existed simultaneously and could not be disentangled then and cannot be disentangled now. On the day she died, Zoo staff found her on the floor of her enclosure. She was the last. After her, there were none. The entire arc of a species that had filled the sky from horizon to horizon for thousands of years ended on the floor of a zoo enclosure in Cincinnati on a Tuesday afternoon in September. The question the neuroscience raises, and cannot fully answer, is whether any of these animals had a category for what was happening to them. Social mammals have neural systems for tracking group membership. Research on primates shows specific neurons that activate in response to conspecific presence and absence. The brain builds a model of the social world and updates it continuously. What happens to that model when the inputs stop arriving is something researchers are only beginning to map in living populations. What happened in the brain of the last individual of a species is something nobody has ever been able to measure directly. The animal is gone before the question can be properly formed. What the biology suggests is that for social species, the experience of total conspecific absence is not neutral. The systems that evolved to locate, track, and respond to members of the group do not simply switch off when the group is no longer there. They keep running. They keep searching. They find nothing. That state has a physiological signature. It has a behavioral signature. What it has subjectively, what it is like from the inside to be the last, is the part of the question that science has not yet found a way to ask properly. Celia was found under a tree. Martha was found on the floor. Lonesome George simply stopped one morning in his enclosure while a keeper was nearby. Each of them carried in their biology an entire species worth of social architecture, calls that had no one left to hear them, alarm responses calibrated for a group that no longer existed, pattern recognition systems running searches that would never return a result. Whether any of them knew what they were is the question the data keeps circling and never reaching. What is certain is that they were the end of something that had existed for longer than the concept of extinction itself, and they arrived at that end the same way every animal arrives at everything, one moment at a time, processing what was in front of them, running the systems they were born with, waiting without